This is the Upskill module for Units 11 and 12, Punctuation. What I'm going to do in this video is go through a variety of types of punctuation, how you can use them to make your writing really clear and make sure that the reader who's reading it really understands what you mean. And we'll go through a number of exercises from Units 11 and 12 to make sure that you're using these types of punctuation correctly. So let's start by looking at Unit 11 for punctuating sentences. We're going to go through a full stop, a comma, a question mark and an exclamation mark and talk about how we can use those to punctuate your sentences clearly and really well. So let's start by looking at a full stop. A full stop is used to finish a sentence. So if we look at this example here, I'm going to the shopping centre after school. The full stop is used to show that the sentence is finished and it's complete, and then in your writing you move on to the next sentence. Fairly simple. A comma is a little bit more complicated. So let's have a look at some of the examples in Unit 11 here. The first one shows where a comma can be used to insert some more information into the middle of a sentence. So the example that we have here is my sister, who has just bought a car, is going to pick me up later. The main clause of that sentence is my sister is going to pick me up later. But the writer wanted to put some more information in about their sister, or add some more information about what's happening. So they've used two commas here and here to insert the phrase, who has just bought a car. So the whole sentence now gives information about the fact that the sister is going to pick the writer up later and that the sister has just bought a car. So the comma is used to put that extra information into the middle of the sentence. So let's try to do another sample one together. Say we had a sentence that said something like, my brother is 6. Really simple sentence, ends with a full stop, as we can see here. One piece of information about the writer's brother. But I want to add some more information about that boy. So I'm going to say that he now has short hair as well. So what I can do is use commas to insert that extra bit of information into the middle of this sentence. So it would become, my brother, who has short hair, is 6. So what we need to do then is to put commas in the same places as before, now to introduce that extra bit of information into the middle of the sentence. So my brother is 6, but the extra information is my brother, who has short hair, is introduced to the middle of the sentence by using commas here and here. Commas can also be used to introduce speech, so to show when you're moving from a normal piece of prose in a piece of writing into some direct speech. It also marks the end of that direct speech, and you can see that in the example that's here. Most commonly, and you will have seen commas used in this way all the way through primary school, is that we use commas to separate items in a list. So if we look at the example here, we will need to stop at the supermarket, the library, and the petrol station. The writer, talking about where they need to stop, is going to stop at 3 places. They've used a comma to separate the first 2 of those, and then they've used the conjunction and to separate the last 2. So the comma is used to separate the items that are leading up in that list up until the last 2 items which are separated by and. So commas are really important. They're important because they give information about what your sentence means. And we can see that in some really well-known and some really good examples of what happens when you don't use a comma properly. So say we look at the first example down here. If I said, let's eat grandma, you would most likely report me to the authorities. If we say, let's eat, comma, grandma, you're inviting your grandma to eat with you rather than eating your grandmother. So that's an interesting one because we've got a comma used after the verb eat to separate what's going to be eaten in the first case, which was grandma. Now it's just an invitation to let's eat generally to somebody else. The second example is the same thing. I love cooking, my family and pets. If we just write that out as I love cooking, my family and pets. Now what you're doing is you're going to cook up your family and your pets. But if you use a comma after cooking, it says I love cooking, and now what we're doing is separating items in a list. I love these 3 things. I love cooking, I love my family, and I love my pets. So commas are really important in examples like that to make your meaning clear and also to make it clear that you're not actually going to eat grandma. Okay, so let's have a look at Unit 12, apostrophes. There are basically two ways that you use apostrophes. The first one is for possession. It will show who owns the thing that you're talking about. So for example, if I was saying Michael's tie, you would have an apostrophe after Michael to show that it's my tie. The other way that we use an apostrophe is for contraction. If we've taken some letters out of some words that we've squished together to make a shorter word, we use an apostrophe to show where those letters have been taken out. So let's have a look at a couple of examples. If we look at the first example here in Unit 12, the first one says the horse's saddle. So we ask the question, whose saddle is it? We know that it's the horse's saddle, so the apostrophe needs to go after the word horse. The second example is Ahmed's desk. We ask the question again, whose desk is it? We know that it's Ahmed's desk, so the apostrophe goes after Ahmed, just here. So that's all fairly straightforward. The same thing with Winston's sandwich. The apostrophe goes after the name of the person who owns the object that you're talking about. It becomes slightly more complicated when you've got an owner that ends in S. So in these two examples down here, the first one, the dog's bones. There's more than one bone and there's more than one dog. And so the apostrophe, instead of going after the G, if just one dog owned those bones, now it has to go after the S because multiple dogs own the same bones. If we had an example where we had a name like James that ends in an S already, if we had James owning a table, we would say it is James's table. The apostrophe would go after the S at the end of his name because he's the person who owns that table. So let's talk about using apostrophes for contraction. Contraction is simply when you take two words, for example, can and not, and you join them together and take out some letters to create a new contracted word like can't. So can't is simply can and not joined together with some letters taken out. So if I write that out in a sentence, I can not do it. I want to contract those two words, can and not. And the letters that I need to take out are these ones, N and O. So the place where I put the apostrophe in the new contracted word can't is where the letters were in the original two words. So what we ended up with is I can't do it. Contracted words like this are really useful for speech, when you're writing speech, direct speech in a piece of writing, or for when you're verbalizing something yourself. Another similar example would be something like, I did not do it. So if we write that out in full, I did not do it. The words that I want to contract together to create a new word, didn't, are these two here. And the letter that I'm going to take out is the O. So when I rewrite that as I didn't do it, we have the apostrophe sitting in the place where that letter O was in the original two words, did and not. So there we have apostrophes used for contraction.